And he said, just go and get away because they're going to, obviously what they did is illegal. So they need to come up with a plan of what they're going to do.
Murders, mysteries, unexplained stories, and our family's crazy opinions on them all. Join us now. The Family School of Thought is in session.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How's everybody doing this week?
Lovely.
Lovely. Lovely. Cass, how is the weather out there?
It's 100 degrees right now.
Ooh.
Better than it was last week.
It just like it cooled down a little bit, I think Friday and Saturday, something like that. And then it just went right back up. I don't think it's ever going to end.
It's
unfortunately
hot all over the world. We've been
yeah.
having great weather, haven't we, Dee?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been perfect.
It's been nice, cool in the mornings and warmer in the afternoon or whatever, but
the rest of the world's having this extreme hot weather. No flooding out there, Cass.
No, we are like in a drought, actually. Like it hasn't rained in probably, I think there was an episode we filmed maybe like 2 or 3 weeks back, maybe longer than that, where I said it like rained for like 2 minutes. That was like the only time it has rained since, I'm going to say like May.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wish.
We need rain. It's so dry.
It rained here last night.
We've had some good rain.
And we had a storm blow through and big branches fell down, but it wasn't bad. It was good.
Okay. We are missing Jessie. Hopefully she'll pipe in whenever she gets a chance. I don't know if she's having internet problems or what's going on, but we're going to go ahead and get started without her. And hopefully she'll pop on whenever she gets a chance. So just so everybody knows, we are the Family School of Thought, and we meet each week and we talk about unsolved mysteries, crimes, UFOs, Bigfoot, whatever the topic comes up, but we analyze the story every week. So, are you guys get ready to get going?
Yes.
Yes. And please like us, share us with your friends. Check us out on the Family School of Thought webpage, or where else can they find us, Cass?
Well, we don't have a webpage. They can email us.
On the YouTube page, I want to say.
The YouTube page. We do have a YouTube channel. They can check us out there if they want to see the podcast as a video format, or if they want to just listen to us while they're walking or driving or anything, working. I love listening to podcasts when I'm working. They can listen to us on Spotify. They can listen to us on Samsung Music, Amazon Music. We are on Podbean, a bunch of them like that. I think we're on iHeartRadio stations, I think like that, anything like that.
Great. Well, we're always looking for your feedback on any suggestions you have for us or any new topics for us to talk about. But any ideas you have, we'd greatly appreciate it. And we appreciate you tuning in every week to us. Okay. Dee, you got anything interesting going on in your life this week?
Just pure craziness with school starting.
Yeah.
And next week it's going to be worse.
We got a busy week next week. Really busy. Yeah.
It's going to be crazy with everybody going to school. I got lots of free time on my hands, but there's too much to do.
I got lots of stuff for you to do. You got free time.
I'm not going to have any free time because I've got to get stuff ready for Weasel Fest and get the kids back and forth to school. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You guys can see where I'm at this week, right?
Yeah. You're at Mackinac. Isn't that the
Grand Hotel? Mackinac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be there.
Oh,
Yeah, they're gonna have the walk this weekend. Are you walking?
across the bridge. No, I'm not.
Yep,
We've got it. Yes, you went with us, right?
I walked across the Mackinac
It was
Bridge.
fun.
Wasn't it awesome?
Yeah.
We did it. We did it for the 50 or no, the 100th.
It
Was
was
it
no, it was the 50th.
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 Yeah, it was the 50th, and I said I'm ready to do it again.
I am too.
Mhm.
That was a lot of fun. I am too.
Great.
We had fun.
Maybe
So,
let's see, how many years ago was that? I'm thinking we
gosh,
should maybe try it for the 60th.
Taylor
It was
was
probably 10 years ago.
Taylor was
It was
about
probably
10 years
10.
old
Yeah, I'm thinking it's
because
not
you
10 years
carried
yet.
Taylor on your back.
Yeah, because she was scared of the grates. I forgot about that.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
think about that, Taylor was just a young girl then.
Young girl. Yeah.
She might have been 9 or 10.
Okay. Okay, so we covered that. Everything we talk about on this show is for entertainment purposes only. So don't send us any hate mail because we already know. but give us your comments. Okay, this story I found for this week really kind of ties into a lot of the topics that we have talked about before. We'll kind of, when I get done telling you the story, we can kind of recap, things that we've talked before and how relevant they are to this story. But this is, I call it the secret room. So back in 1953 in London, a young man moved into a new apartment. And on his very first day there, he'd only been there a couple hours. It was a real rundown old apartment. And he decided to, spruce it up, and he started peeling wallpaper off the wall. He was going to re-wallpaper first thing. And so he worked his way through the kitchen and got to this, like a pantry type room. And he started peeling it off, and he discovers a door that had been wallpapered over. And so he pulled all the wallpaper off, and he opens this door, this hidden door, and it
Was it a little door or a big door?
it was a smaller door,
Like the door up in the closet, or like
I think kind of like yes,
Like you
kind
got
of
a duck to get in.
right,
Yeah. right? Okay. I'm thinking,
and it was in the back of this closet, which
Oh.
typically would have had shelves in it, but he had taken the shelves off to take off the wallpaper. This is why nobody ever noticed this door being there.
I see.
So what he's seen traumatized him for the rest of his life.
What?
Yes.
Oh,
Holy cow!
that's what he saw.
Well,
Yeah, tell me what he's seen. Come on, hurry up.
and it also changed
Was it
the legal
it-
system in London
what?
after that, or the UK, I should say, in the UK.
Hmm.
And the crime was, well, I won't tell you what he found in there, but I'll tell you. 3 years prior to that, a young couple moved into, this was an apartment building, and it was an old, rundown, bad part of town apartment building. And 3 years prior to that, a couple had moved into the third story apartment. Okay. And the guy's name was Timothy, and he was born in, I can't remember, I think 1923, I believe. And he was born into a family where they had lots of kids. The father abandoned them right after he was born. And so they were extremely poor and lived in poverty. And so he spent his whole childhood in poverty. And not only was they poor and he was in poverty, but he developed a form of, he had a problem with his foot, and it had these big blisters on the back. It was kind of like a disease that he had, and he couldn't get rid of it. And of course they were poor, so they couldn't really treat it well. And so he missed a great deal of school because of it, because either these blisters were, infested and popping, or he got medical treatment and he couldn't walk on it. He also had a very low IQ. So he had like a 50, and like 100 is okay. Anything over that is, better, but this was like a 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't he get an I mean, did his parents not, or his mother not educate him, or was she working?
No, he missed a lot of school. She had a lot of kids, very poor, had to work 3 or 4 jobs. I mean, it was really, and he was born in 1923, so things were different then. Kids just kind of raised themselves, and but he suffered a lot in childhood and was not able to get an education. And matter of fact, when he was 14, he just kind of gave up on school and went to work. And so he spent, the first job he got was in a mine, coal mine, which was very dangerous work. But he could never really keep a job neither, because this problem with his foot. He was illiterate, couldn't read or write, so he's, every time he'd get a job, it wouldn't last long, because he'd have an outbreak with his foot, or or he just had problems learning the job because he couldn't read or write. So when he was 18, he tried to join the army, because now World War II was going on, and they wouldn't take him because of that. So finally he gets a job, and it's with a delivery. He's delivering, I think, baked goods. Like, he had to be there really early in the morning, and he meets this young girl who's only 18. He's like 23 at this point. And so he meets this young girl, and she's 18, and they hit it off real well. And she had a very low IQ too. So it's 2 of them together, right? So they dated, they hit it off right away, and they dated a little while, and they got married. So soon after they get married, actually they lived with his mother for a while. There was a bunch of people living in this apartment because they were so poor. But finally they scraped up enough money to get this little old rundown apartment that was even worse than the one that they moved out of. And she becomes pregnant, and they have a baby. And they are so poor, that they can't afford their bills. They're taking out all these really high interest rate loans just to survive, not to better themselves, but just to survive. He can't keep a job. And of course, they start fighting constantly because of that. And in this apartment building, like, people walking down the streets can hear them screaming and hollering, and physically fighting with each other the whole time. And down on the first floor is an older couple, and he kind of tries to talk to him and say, listen, it's gonna be okay, and they become friends. And so this guy's a lot older than him, but he's kind of giving him fatherly advice. He never had a father, so he's giving him fatherly advice, and they create a bond. Well, not long after that, he now is struggling so much, and now he starts drinking to add to all their problems. And of course, they can't even afford food on the table, let alone enough liquor. But so it just escalates even worse. Right. And then she gets pregnant with their second child. And now he's just distraught. There's just no way they're going to be able to bring another child into the world. They can't even afford the one they have now. They can't afford their, apartment. They can't afford anything. Mm-hmm. And so he goes, and the elderly guy that lives downstairs, and this guy is, I wouldn't say he's elderly, but he's a lot older than him, and he's really respected in the community. He's got a degree, and he was a war hero, and I think he was a postman, and everybody in the neighborhood really liked him. Well, what they find out is this guy has had a lot of marital problems, and that's what kind of tried to get him to help out Timothy. And so they found out that he got married. I forget what year it was, but it was in the 20s, and they were married very short time, and then they separated, and they spent most of their time separated They never got a divorce, but they didn't live together, and they never had any children. So prior to Timothy and his wife moving there, they had gotten back together. So now they're older, but they're together and they're living together. And so he thought he had a real connection with this Timothy because he understood where he was coming from. Now she becomes pregnant again, and it's like, that's it. They can't take it anymore. So this man that lived downstairs, I forget what his name is, says, I have medical training from being in the war. I could provide an abortion on her. And so he thinks, this is the answer. Our prayers have been answered, because they couldn't afford an abortion. And again,
and they already had 2 kids.
No, they only had the one. They're having another one, and so they want to get an abortion. Now it's 1947 or something like that. So, of course, abortions were illegal. So this man says, I can give an abortion, get her an abortion. So he thinks it's a great idea. He runs up to his wife, and she thinks it's a great idea. And so, for whatever reason, the wife and his daughter's name was Geraldine, and her name was Burl. They decided to go down the stairs to see this guy, and his wife left, and Timothy leaves. So it's just this man, Burl, and her daughter Geraldine. And he gives her this, he has this contraption he has made, and it's like a little cup, and it has these wires coming out of it, and then it has this thing for her to put in her mouth. And what he does is it gasses her, so she passes out. Right? And so she wakes up, and she is being raped by him. And she tries to fight him off. And he ends up strangling her to death. Right? So Timothy comes home, goes to see how it went. He's like, well, how'd it go? Is she doing okay? And he says, no, unfortunately, she passed away during the procedure. And he goes, you need to get out of here. Go take off to, they're in London at the time. He said, take off to, I don't know, somewhere else, Prague or somewhere. And he said, just go and get away, because they're going to, obviously what they did is illegal. So they need to come up with a plan of what they're going to do. So he stays away for like 2 weeks. Right?
The Timothy guy or the doctor?
Timothy stays away for like 2 weeks. And then he starts freaking out about it, right? So he goes to the police in this other town where he's at, not in their town, and tells them that he killed his wife. And so they go, the police, and Timothy had developed this whole, because of his IQ, because of all his problems he had in life, he became a manipulator by lies. He would tell everybody these huge lies, of all these things he's done and everything like that. And so the police, they don't really know what to believe. So they go back to this apartment. It's not in their town. It's not their local police. And they question the guy downstairs. And they said, well, what's going on? And he goes, I don't know. And he tells the police that this guy is watching their daughter, who's 13 months old. Right? So they go to check it out, and the guy just goes, and the guy and his wife are there. Her name was Ethel, I believe. They said, no, he took off. I don't know where he's at. I don't know where they went to, but their child is not with us. She's never been here. Right. So now the police go back, and he has told the police that he had strangled her to death, and then put her in the sewer out front of this building. So when they get to the apartment, the first thing, they cannot get the lid off of this sewer, so they're like, well, that's weird. If you just took this off and threw her body in there, like this would be, you'd be able to take this off. And finally, it takes like 4 guys, but they finally get it open. They go down there, there's no body. So they go back. They have him in jail, and this other, and so they said, what did you do? That's not true. We went to the apartment. They don't know where you guys are at, and where is your wife? And he says, I don't know. All I know is I left my daughter there. I strangled my wife, put her in the sewer, and that was 2 weeks ago. And so they keep him in jail. So they go back now, and they're like, they're going to investigate this whole building. And they go through their apartment. They go through the whole apartment building, and they go, can't find any evidence of anything, Well, then they decide after that, they're just going to walk around the neighborhood, and they find this old beat up shack, and they go inside, and both the mother and daughter are in there dead, wrapped up in a blanket.
So they killed that doctor, or that guy killed the old man, killed the daughter too.
Well, so they go back to this guy, and they're like, what's going on, and so they go back to Timothy, who's now in jail, and they said, we know you killed your daughter too, because we found her dead body. And he now he's realizes that his daughter's dead too. So now he starts telling the truth. Hey, this guy was going to give her an abortion. It went bad. She died. I left my daughter there. He tells the truth, but now they've interviewed everybody this Timothy is known, and they're all like, oh, he's a big compulsive liar. I wouldn't believe anything he said, So they don't believe him, right? So he ends up going to jail and is executed for the murder of his wife and daughter. And again, this was 1949 or 47 or 49. There wasn't this, 10-year trial period of, if we're going to execute him or not. They didn't believe him. He went to a court and was dead. I think within 10 days, he was hung. And they made him, literally took him from this chair and hung him in the next room. That's what they did back then. So 3 years go by, and this guy moves into this apartment and decides he's going to clean it up. One thing I thought was really odd about this story was this apartment was really old and run down and nasty, and it was like, really bad people living there. But this guy that lived downstairs was well respected, and he had an education, and was in the military, and he had done all these things. And so I'm thinking, why would he be living in an apartment building that was that bad if he was that great of a person? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it seemed odd. But anyways, this guy moves into this apartment. He starts to renovate it. He opens the store, and there's 3 dead women in there.
Yikes.
Yeah. So they go back and get this guy and said, there's 3 dead women. And he admits to killing them. And they find his wife.
The old man?
Yeah. He admits to killing them. And they find his wife in the house and under the kitchen floorboards. And they find 2 more bodies buried out in the yard. So this guy is a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And he even said, when the police came to investigate,
well, how come the police didn't have that?
Because they didn't believe Timothy because of his history, and they thought this guy has such a good reputation, we're not really going to question, what he says. It seemed very clear to them that Timothy had killed his wife and daughter because she was having another baby, and they just couldn't take the stress.
Right.
But this guy, they even, when they were investigating, a dog dug up a dead body in the next yard while they were there, and he kind of like threw it over the fence, so they wouldn't see it. Like they literally were there when the dog's digging up dead bodies in the yard.
So, wow. So the new guy who moved into the apartment and found the 3 dead girls, was
Right.
he in Timothy's old apartment, or was he in the
No.
old man's?
Oh, the old man in the apartment, the older couple. Right.
Right. Okay.
So he had been a serial killer and was keeping these dead bodies right there in the building.
So it was in the old guy's apartment that found.
Right.
They found the 3
They
bodies.
found the door in that.
Right. So he had been killing these women, and he
hiding
had
them in the building.
a what people get aroused by, but the decomposing bodies was, he liked that.
He was a necromancer.
I don't know what you call it, but that's weird. So here, Timothy was executed wrongfully just because of his circumstances in life, and not being an educated person.
And he called Wolf one too many times.
And he, lied so much.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And here's this old man who got away with murdering women after woman after woman just because of the image he put up, and nobody would believe that he did that.
It probably was mostly the same as Timothy's wife, where he was promising abortions to young women who couldn't afford them and couldn't afford babies.
Right.
And I bet you most of his victims were in similar circumstances as Timothy and his wife.
Well, we were talking at I don't know what show it was, or we were abortion rights and how women are forced to have children they don't want, and that because of that, those children end up not being good citizens.
Well adjusted, yeah.
Well adjusted, and so it's a perfect example of what we were talking about. His mother didn't want children, had to have them because what choice did she have? Then didn't want them and didn't care for them properly. He has children, and he's trying to abort them because at least he was trying to break the cycle, right?
Right.
And so, that was so in 1953 is when he found the dead bodies in there, and so the UK changed their policy about hanging people, killing people, executions, and that was the let's see, like 3 more years later, they had put a halt on any executions that were in the process then, and then they never had any more after that. 3 years they changed their law. So, and I've talked to you guys many times about how I feel about capital punishment, and this is a perfect example. Somebody got killed that shouldn't have, and you can't trust people to see the right story.
Right. Well, and that's also something, in the US, our court system is a jury of your peers. But a jury of your peers is some people who most likely don't understand law, don't understand certain aspects of the crime. And so you're literally having everyday people judge you based off of whether you're guilty or not. And a lot of times we see guilty verdicts that are overturned because the person, it was not guilty, and they had proof and evidence, and it didn't come to play.
Lots of times, it's whoever has the most money for the best attorney. And then the right story is never really presented to the jurors. There's too many doubts in what they are trying to present, and the better lawyer can turn that around and make them think they're not hearing the right story.
Right.
So yeah, I thought it was an interesting story, and it's a sad story, really.
Yeah, it is.
There are some pictures of him and his wife and Timothy and his wife, and you can see that they're not educated people. I mean, I don't want to say they look like it, but that really, what kind of chance did they have in life?
That's too bad.
Yeah. Anyways,
Hmm.
it tied into a lot of the topics that we've been talking about, and had a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I especially like the lying so much that like nobody really knows the story. Like that definitely goes into Casey Anthony that we talked about, who also, had
Or Donald Trump.
her daughter.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't done a story about Donald Trump, so I don't know.
But you're right. So when they
What?
lie so much, and society just kind of puts them in a box and says,
Right.
Hey,
Well, because even since we've done that story, we've had comments on the story that people who are defending Casey and saying that, this is she's innocent. The real story is this, 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 and this. But the problem is we don't know that because even Casey doesn't really understand what she is telling, whether it's truth or not, because her story changes so often that we're never going to know what really happened to little Kaylee.
Right.
Right.
And this guy, he was lying when he said he killed her, because he's
right.
He's trying to protect this John, this other guy,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
he's his friend, and this was an
Right.
accident. So he's trying to protect him until he found out his daughter was dead. Then that was when he
Right.
tries to tell the whole truth, but now it's too late.
Right.
He even had a signed, confession letter that he couldn't read or write. So obviously somebody wrote that for him.
Wrote it for him. Right.
So that guy that downstairs, he probably wrote it.
No, the police wrote it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They probably said, okay, well, you did this and this, right? And he said,
right.
yes.
Yeah.
That's why you should never speak to the police without an attorney present, because they will coerce you into a confession, whether you think they're doing it or not. Anything you say can and will be held against you is there for the reason.
I suppose if I was ever in that position where I was being interviewed by the police, not that I killed my wife and daughter, but, if I was ever in that position, I just wouldn't say anything. They
really tell you really shouldn't say anything until an attorney is present, because that the Miranda rights are there because so many times people are held accountable for things that they said in duress. After they usually an interview tactic is to keep you up for more than 48 hours and then question you. So you're exhausted, you're hungry, you're sleep deprived. You don't even really know what you're saying, and you're just confessing to crimes you didn't even know were happening.
Right. And he had tuberculosis. It was
tuberculosis.
It was a form of tuberculosis that was
his feet thing.
Yeah.
Interesting, because isn't that your lungs?
Well, I heard that. I thought that too. This was some type of it affected his.
Interesting. Well, it's probably, tuberculosis is basically an infection in a continuous infection in the lungs. So maybe it's just a continuous infection in the feet or something.
Yeah.
Strain.
But it came and went through his whole life. They tried to do treatments on it, but of course they didn't have medical, insurance or things taken care of. He spent a lot of that's why he never made it through school, because he wasn't there most of the time. And
interesting.
Wow.
And another thing too is in today's world, if you've seen a couple screaming and hollering and beating each other up, somebody would intervene. You know what I mean?
Well,
and this
we
John
like to think so.
This John did, but he ended up murdering him. So,
he was manipulating the situation.
Yeah, right.
So
he probably took
the
advantage of the fact that they were fighting so much.
Right.
Because he's the reason that Timothy started drinking too, right?
Right.
So he probably was just manipulating the situation.
So this old guy, what was his name?
John.
John. So he lived on the bottom floor.
Right. Him and his
then
wife.
Timothy and his wife lived on the middle floor.
Pearl.
And another couple lived above them.
No. Burl and Timothy lived on the third floor, and John and his wife lived on the first floor.
So who lived in the middle floor?
I don't know. I mean,
but with all of these decomposed bodies, didn't anybody smell that?
No, I guess
turn
not.
that in.
Because they said this John got off on that, the smell of decomposing bodies, but nobody else in the. It was a bad place to live, it was all burned out. So probably people just thought it stunk,
Yeah.
Gross.
Who knew? Yeah.
Right. I just don't understand how anybody could smell those bodies and then not, or even the police or.
Well, they probably didn't go into John's house. That's the thing. Is that all the bodies were inside John's apartment? Or in the yard, I think you said, Dad.
Yeah. And the yard wasn't
their
yard; it was a neighbor's. But it is like an old burned out building was there. I mean, it's like,
Right. So it was probably they didn't go into John's house where all the bodies were, and that's why they didn't smell anything.
Well, and his wife was alive when they were there, and these women could have been killed after that, for one thing.
That's true.
Or they were already in this room sealed off,
That's true. The room is sealed off. It's not like it was just an open doorway.
Right. I mean, I got to think maybe the wife was killed first because, we got 3 dead women in the kitchen. Maybe that's why she got killed, but you would think she would have went to the police.
Well, I was going to say she also had to have something to do with the wife and child dying.
The yard next door, those were killed before she was because, they were there when they came to investigate.
Mm-hmm.
And what about that Ethel? I mean, she didn't turn that in?
Well, who knows? I mean, obviously she didn't turn it in, but you don't know if she had any involvement or, like I said, most of their marriage, they weren't even together. So she could probably seen signs of this when they were newlyweds or younger and left, and then I don't know why she came back. Back again in 1949, women didn't have the opportunity to support themselves or do, so she was like, well, this is my lot in life. I gotta, what are my.
Well, how long were they divorced or separated?
A long time.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were married for a long time, but most of that was they're separated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Interesting.
And how desperate they were to get an abortion, to go through that extreme.
Unfortunately, that happened a lot back
then. Because it was illegal, so we make that illegal again. This is how desperate people are too.
It already is.
And you know what else? Well, a couple things about it being illegal now. People have a lot more education to make these decisions.
Yes.
Right. And they are wise enough to go to places where that's probably going to be done a lot better.
Right. I agree.
Even if it's illegal to have it done at this place, it's a place they're doing it.
Right, but unfortunately comes that that is true. We have a lot more options now, but in places like this, mostly Planned Parenthood buildings are common location for domestic terrorist attacks because of this reason. Yeah. And a lot of times it's looked over because, well, they were doing something illegal. Oh, they were doing something that's not legal in this state.
I didn't agree with. Yeah.
Right.
And if abortions become illegal in every state, who's really going to be hurt is the poor, uneducated
Yes.
people.
Yes.
You would know to go to a place where it's illegal and they're the procedure is done right, and it might cost you money, but you are capable of doing that. But young girls that don't have the money, don't have the education, and have
Right.
low IQs, those are the ones that are going to end up having the babies.
You're right. And it is. And a lot of people have been saying that since even before Roe v. Wade was overturned, that this is a classist strategy to keep the poor poor and the rich rich. Because the rich will always be able to have abortions. They will always know somebody who's a doctor who can do the service for them. They will always get away with it. It's the poor people who are going to be extremely hurt by this.
The people that can't go to anybody and just get an abortion.
Right. They don't have the money. They don't have the means to do it. And they don't have the, I don't want to say the intelligence, but they don't know how to work that out. And they're surrounded by people that are very similar to them. So I'm sure there's these young girls that are going to be having these babies are surrounded by other young girls who had babies. They did.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
So, right. So then that just becomes a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Having babies you don't need at a young age and don't want.
And you don't know anything different. You don't know anything differently because that's what you're surrounded by.
Prepared to raise a child. And right. And that's happened. That's happened lots of times, happened a lot where people have had children that shouldn't have had children. And it's not that they're bad people. They just they don't know how to do it.
I see that quite a bit. It's that these people aren't bad people to deal with the situation.
A young girl probably doesn't know she's pregnant until it's late.
Too late.
Then she doesn't know what to do. What is she supposed to do? And if she doesn't tell somebody right away, well, then she has no help and nobody making decisions. And before it's too late, it is too late. And she has to have
that's what a lot of these red states that now have implemented heartbeat laws, which basically means that it is illegal after a heartbeat is traced to have an abortion. Well, that's at 6 weeks. And most women do not find out that they're pregnant until 8 weeks into the pregnant. They don't know that they're pregnant until 8 weeks of pregnancy.
Or
pretty. Do you guys have any questions or anything to add to tonight's topic?
That's pretty sad.
Yeah.
And don't trust just anybody. And anybody that would just take somebody's word for it without checking out information. Well, like you said, he wasn't educated.
It's the desperation of it too.
It was the 40s. That's the way things, especially abortions, that's the way they got done back then. By somebody. And he convinced them that he was in the military and had medical training, and it wasn't like,
Did they ever figure out if he was in the military?
He was not. No, he was in the military, but he had no medical training at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they didn't say he wasn't in the military anyhow. I don't know if they even looked into it, but he didn't have any medical training.
It was definitely an interesting story.
Yeah. And how all these dead people come alive. I don't understand how all these people come up missing and nobody reported it. And
Again,
there's a million stories like that. A million stories.
Back in the 40s, people come up missing all the time. Nobody how were you going to solve that? They didn't have, most people didn't even have a telephone. You know what I mean? They had no communications or way of following up on stuff. It's not like he's going to show up on webcam somewhere, in the grocery store or something.
Right.
Nothing to do it. People come up missing all the time. Remember Jenny, my Aunt Jenny? She had a brother that just up and disappeared, and they never did find him.
Well, that's strange.
Back then, you could, if you didn't like your life, you could just go start a life somewhere else and just not tell anybody. And you could change your name and everything. It's like you didn't really have to prove, you didn't have. You could go get a social security card with whatever name on it.
Yeah.
They didn't have all the things in place to keep, do whatever you want.
Huh.
Most time, before the 40s anyhow, but you probably never had your social security card. You had no identification. Birth certificate, it was just whatever you said you were.
Crazy.
And I'm sure the women that he killed were women that, were from that same type of life. They really didn't have anybody to.
I'm sure that it was all the people that lived in that apartment or who would probably rent from
Probably
them.
was prostitutes, that
Mm-hmm.
who knew. Nobody would even notice that they were missing.
Right. They were already missing and just nobody knew who they were.
Right.
That's true. Sad. But all right.
All right. Well,
Great stories.
yeah. Well, anything else, you guys?
No.
Okay. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us. Please email us at the Family School of Thought at gmail.com. Leave us any messages or any ideas you have for us, and like us and share us with your friends.
And subscribe.
Thank you so much, guys. Everybody, we'll see you next week. Sound good?
Good.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.